Hey everybody, Ben here. Welcome back to another Beard Guys video. Today I wanted to run through my settings for Delta Force on controller on console. I've done one settings video before, but now I've had a bit more time to play the game in a live environment. I've been playing this most days since the game's launch, and I've just been tweaking my settings a little bit, so I wanted to update you all on what my current settings are that I'm pretty happy with. I'll show you some gameplay in the background from normal games we've been playing on the Xbox version of the game, so you can see how these are working in real PvP situations. Obviously, settings are quite a subjective thing. People like different things. There's no settings that everyone is going to love, but hopefully if you're struggling, which I think a lot of people are with their controller settings, you can just use these as a base and then you can tweak these and adjust them to your personal preferences. Personally, I like to play with a relatively high sort of general sens and then a bit of a lower ADS sens so that my aim doesn't drift around too much when I'm aiming down sights towards targets. So hopefully that'll work for you as well. I'm not going to go into loads of detail on each of the individual settings today. I just want to show you what my new ones are. If you want a bit more explanation on individual settings, check out my previous video that is a bit longer. So first up, just something you want to make sure you've changed before we worry about the sens is go to controller sensitivity and control and just check the auto run here, tactical sprint under movement. This is set to close rather than auto run or tac sprint. Otherwise, if that's not set to close, then when you push the left stick, you'll just start full sprinting, even if you just pushed it a tiny way. So change that, and then you can move slowly by pushing the stick just a short way. So next up, the actual sens for my dead zones. I've got right stick set to 8, and I've got left stick set to 10. Even with a brand new controller with no drift, you're probably going to find you need to have these a little way up. If you have them much below this, I found particularly with the left stick, that needed to be a little bit higher. Otherwise, you'd start moving around on your own. Generally, dead zones, just have them as low as you can so they're responsive, but don't have them so low that you're drifting without actually pushing any input on the sticks. As for input sensitivity, I've settled on standard. I know a lot of people like to use linear, some maybe dynamic. I tried linear. For me, standard just felt better, just seemed to work better for me. But certainly there's plenty of people trying linear and that's been working for them. But like I said, standard has just been working better for me. When you get to the presets, I'd recommend just changing this to high and then to custom. That'll give you a default that's fairly similar to this if you want to tweak to get my settings, or you can just enter all of these manually. For hipfire horizontal sens, I've got 350. And for vert sens, I've got 220. You make much bigger horizontal movements than vertical movements, so it makes sense to have a higher horizontal than a vertical. For me, this gave me enough speed to sort of look left and right in a relatively quick way without it being wildly out of control and making me like over aim on targets and that kind of thing. For horizontal dead zone acceleration, I've got that set at 80, so there's a little bit of aim acceleration there. And for vertical, I've got that at 20, so there's a lot less on the vertical, again following that same theory for big horizontal movements and small vertical movements. Hipfire turning activation time, how long it takes to activate that aim acceleration, I've got set very low. On 10, we've got 0 on delay, and then ADS horizontal we've got set at 80 and vertical set at 50. These ones I fine-tuned quite a lot, but I found this was about right, taking into account the aim assist in the game, and just helped me keep my aim on targets when I was aiming down sights to them. It felt quite nice and sticky without being too twitchy and pulling it off of targets too much. ADS horizontal and vertical aim acceleration I've got on 0, activation time on 10, and turn delay on 0. This is basically because generally I'm going to be looking around in my hipfire view, and then when I'm ADSing, I'm only going to be looking at small areas, and I'm not really going to be moving that cursor around too much. I'm not going to be tracking targets over big sweeping long distances when I'm aiming down sights. I'm normally going to zoom out, then re-aim, zoom out and re-aim. So that's why I'd keep this sens quite low, and it helps keep that quite sticky having these low senses in horizontal and vertical. I've switched from having set sens per zoom. I did have this before with some slightly tweaked settings like this, but I've actually settled on just having this as set off. It feels fine and a bit more consistent, and it's just a little bit less complicated, so you don't have to worry about setting another 10 sens settings under this little bit here. Sens transition mode, I've got an ADS transition. That's basically as you ADS, it's at what point of that ADS animation does the sens change. I'd leave that on ADS transition. The others feel very weird. It does feel a little bit weird anyway, and hopefully they tweak that a little bit. Scope magnification adapts automatically, I've got on. Don't worry about invert, I just play inverted. You probably don't want to unless you're old like me. And then most of the rest of these don't really matter too much. Ground vehicle sens and aircraft sens and gunner sens, I've got these all on default because I don't really play warfare. Obviously you might want to adjust those if if you play the warfare mode of the game. I just play operations, so they don't really matter to me. And you can turn off and on aim assist at the bottom of the page here. The only other stuff I've really changed here is on the aim tab. I've bound clicking the left stick and the right stick in for my left lean peek and right lean peek, which is kind of the same as the default PUBG console controls. So that's my leaning. If you set your peek controls in this aim tab, then that will only work when you're ADSing. If you want to be able to lean when you're not aiming down sights, you need to do that in the controls and combat tab, which is here. So you see these two bindings that I haven't bound. That's your left lean peek and right lean peek here. You would want to bind those to something if you wanted to lean without aiming down sights. I have put a couple of things on the paddles on my Elite controller. I've got one on the left that I've bound to right on the D-pad, so I can hold that down to bring up the med wheel when I'm running around and moving, because otherwise I have to take a thumb off a stick to press the D-pad, and then I stop moving while I'm trying to med, and it's a bit awkward. And on the right-hand side paddle, I've just got it set to up on the D-pad again, which is useful because I don't have to take my thumbs off of the sticks if I'm going to use that, and that's for tagging, marking enemies, marking locations, stuff like that. There might be better uses for paddles. You could put jump or whatever, reload, stuff like that. But for me, that's been working for the time being. Over on the control tab, there's a couple of other bits here you might want to know. Aim control, I've got set to hold. You can change that to toggle if you prefer toggle ADS. I've got hold. Auto hold breath, I've got on at the moment. I'm still umming and ahhing about this. It sometimes is a bit annoying, but for the time being, I think it does help to have that on generally. Lean peek, I've got set to toggle. That works quite well for me rather than a hold in this game. Feels a bit more natural. And then I've got auto lean turned off. You can have that on, and then anytime you ADS near an object that you can peek around, you'll automatically peek on it. But I found that sometimes it just seemed to do it on slightly weird objects I didn't really want to lean on, so I've just turned that off for the time being, but you might be able to make it work if you didn't want to manually peek at all. So that's everything for today. Hopefully you found that useful. Don't forget to check out my live stream, and if you want to get discounted Delta coins for buying anything in game, check out my Midas buy link down below. I'm an official Delta Force partner. That's their official website for selling coins, and you can get them much cheaper than buying them in game by doing it through my creator link, and that helps me out as well. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Ben. We are the Beard Guys, and I'll see you next time.